She showed up at my doorstep with a clipboard and a fake smile. "You're being held responsible for the lake flood," she said like she was talking about a parking ticket. I laughed at first, thinking she was joking. Responsible? For the lake? But her smirk didn't fade. Behind her stood 2 HOA board members, all in matching blue polos with the logo of our neighborhood's HOA, Lakeside Harmony. The irony of that name hit different when half the neighborhood was still covered in mud. 3 days ago, a storm ripped through our town. The lake behind the community overflowed, breaching the old retaining wall. Water tore through the streets, swallowing lawns, cars, and basements. 25 homes were destroyed. Mine somehow stood untouched, just mud on the driveway. I was still helping my neighbors clean when the HOA showed up demanding money. "We have calculated the damages," Karen, the self-appointed president, said while waving a stack of papers. "The total is $17 million. You'll need to pay that." I blinked. "You think I have $17 million? She crossed her arms.
"You're the one who installed that drainage system behind your house?"
"It redirected water flow and caused the collapse." I stared at her. "That drain was built by the city 20 years ago." She smiled wider like a cat that found a cornered mouse. "We have witnesses who saw you near the lake days before the storm." Don't deny it, I did go near the lake. I was checking the cracks in the wall. The same cracks I'd been warning the HOA about for months. "I emailed you about those cracks," I said. "Twice." Karen's expression didn't change. "We don't have any record of that." Of course they didn't. She deleted them. I tried to stay calm, but my hands clenched. "You ignored my warnings and now you're blaming me?" She stepped closer. "If you don't take responsibility, we'll take legal action. The HOA has the right to seize your property to cover damages." Her tone was pure poison. The 2 men behind her nodded like trained parrots. I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She wanted this fight. "You can't take my property," I said. "You don't own this land." "Oh, we'll see about that," she said, turning on her heels. "Our lawyer will contact you tomorrow." When she left, I stood there staring at the muddy lake in the distance. Kids' toys floated near the trees. Shingles hung from branches, and the smell of wet wood filled the air. My phone buzzed. Another neighbor asking for help pumping out their basement. I helped them anyway, but in the back of my mind her words echoed, $17 million. That night I couldn't sleep. I dug through my files, pulled up the email chain, and sure enough, every message I'd sent the HOA about the wall was marked, "Read." She'd seen them. Then I noticed something else, an attachment in one of her replies from months ago, a PDF stamped, "Confidential." It was a city engineering report from 2 years back. It warned that the retaining wall was at risk of failure and needed immediate reinforcement. The HOA had known all along, so why blame me? The next morning, a white SUV with HOA decals parked outside my house. A man in a suit came out holding an envelope. He handed it to me and said, "You've been served." Inside was a letter. Notice of liability, property owner, Jonathan Hale. They were actually suing me for $17 million. My wife looked at me, panic in her eyes. "John, what are we going to do?" I didn't answer. My mind was racing through every possibility. Insurance, lawyers, news, maybe even selling the house. But one thing I knew for sure. I wasn't going down for something they'd covered up. I pulled out my old hard drive, the one I used when I worked as a civil engineer before retiring early. On it, I had blueprints of the entire neighborhood infrastructure, including the drainage and lake system. And those plans told a very different story. The HOA had approved a landscaping project that altered the lake's overflow route. Their own design had weakened the retaining wall. I smiled for the first time in days. They wanted to play dirty? Fine. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. "Karen," I whispered to myself, looking out the window at her house across the lake. "You picked the wrong guy." They tried to drown me in lies, but I built the dam they're about to crash into. The next morning, I drove to City Hall with a folder full of documents. The receptionist barely looked up. "Engineering department?" I asked. She nodded toward a long hallway. The moment I entered, I saw a familiar face, a Mark, an old coworker from my engineering days. He'd aged a little, but his sharp eyes were the same. "John." "What the hell are you doing here?" he said, surprised. I gave him the short version, the flood, the HOA, the lawsuit. His eyebrows shot up. They're blaming you. That wall was condemned years ago. HOA refused the city's repair plan because they didn't want to pay the fees. Can you prove that? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, but it's buried in the archives. Officially, the report was lost. Unofficially, Karen requested its removal. That name again. I clenched my jaw. Can you get me a copy? He hesitated. I can't just hand out city documents. But if someone requested an open records review, the system might accidentally print the old version. He winked. I filled out the form before he even finished talking. 2 hours later, I walked out of City Hall with the proof in my hands. The 2019 engineering report clearly stating the HOA's negligence caused the lake's structural risk. Their signatures were right there on the approval page. When I got home, I saw Karen standing in my driveway, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her eyes. You went to the city, she said flatly. You think that's going to save you? I didn't answer. I just opened my car door and held the report where she could see it. Her lips tightened. Careful, she said softly. If you keep digging, you'll regret it. I stepped closer. You already flooded this town, Karen. I'm not the one who should be scared. She glared for a second before walking away, heels sinking into the muddy gravel. That night, I scanned every page of the report and sent copies to my lawyer, a local news tip line, and, just to be sure, my own cloud storage. Then strange things started happening. The next day, my mailbox was ripped off the post. My backyard gate was open, and muddy footprints led to my porch. Someone had cut the cable line running to my security cameras. I checked my phone footage and all gone. Karen was escalating. Later that afternoon, a police cruiser rolled up. The officer got out holding a notepad. Mr. Hale, we received a report that you've been tampering with HOA property near the lake, he said. Tampering? I repeated. With what property? The water flow sensors, he said, glancing at me carefully. They claim you're trying to interfere with evidence. I laughed bitterly. That's ridiculous. I haven't been near the lake since the flood. He sighed. Look, between us, I think this whole HOA mess is out of control. But I have to file the report. Do what you need to, I said. Just make sure my side is on record, too. After he left, I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed into the lake's surface. My wife joined me quietly. They won't stop, she said. I know, I whispered. That's why I'm not stopping either. The next day, Mark called. John, something's wrong. The city's server that had the flood report. It's been wiped. Completely erased. My stomach dropped. You're kidding. No, but there's something else. The HOA just filed an emergency injunction. They're trying to freeze your assets. Freeze my what? They want to stop you from hiring a lawyer. They're claiming you're hiding money offshore. I almost laughed from disbelief. I'm retired. My biggest offshore investment is a fishing rod. Mark sighed. They're scared, John. You must have hit a nerve. That night, my lawyer called. Whatever you found, keep it safe. Don't trust anyone. These people have connections. He was right. The next morning, a black SUV followed me from my street to the grocery store. No license plate, tinted windows. When I slowed down, it slowed too. When I turned left, it turned left. By the time I pulled into the police station, it was gone. Karen wasn't just using HOA rules anymore. She was using power. And if she wanted a war, she was going to get one. I plugged in a new set of hidden cameras, the kind I used to test in construction sites. Thermal, motion, night vision. This time, if anyone came near my property, I'd have every angle. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted the truth out, and I wanted her to choke on it. That night, as thunder rumbled again in the distance, I stood by the window watching lightning flash over the lake. Let it rain, I muttered. Let's see whose foundation breaks this time. They tried to bury the truth under mud, but I'm the guy who built the floodgate. The next morning, the rain came back, heavy and angry. I stood by the window, watching water crawl down the street like it was trying to remember the path it destroyed before. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, Mr. Hale, a woman's voice said. This is Channel 7 News. We received your email about the HOA lawsuit. Can you confirm that the HOA president, Mrs. Karen Lloyd, was warned about the wall before the flood? Yes, I said, gripping the phone tighter. I have proof. We'd like to interview you on camera. For a second, I froze. Going public meant Karen would lose her mind. but it also meant she couldn't hide anymore. "Tomorrow morning," I said, after I hung up. I noticed an email from Karen. No subject. No greeting, just a line that made my stomach twist. "If you talk to anyone, we'll destroy everything you love." I showed it to my wife. "She's bluffing," she whispered, though her hands trembled as she said it. "Maybe," I said. "But she's getting desperate." That night, thunder rolled through the valley again. Around midnight, my motion detector pinged. I opened the live feed from the new cameras. Someone was near the lake, moving fast under the rain. I zoomed in. It was Karen. She was wearing a hood and holding something, a wrench maybe. Then another figure appeared beside her, one of the HOA board members. They were messing with the drainage pipes right near the broken wall. "What the hell are they doing?" I whispered. My wife looked over my shoulder. "Are they trying to cause another flood?" I recorded everything and every movement, every word. At one point, Karen looked straight toward my house as if she could see me through the darkness. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. "He'll never prove it. Tomorrow it'll all be gone." The next morning before dawn, I drove down to the lake quietly. The storm had calmed, but mud still covered everything. The pipes they tampered with were open, wide enough for water to surge through. They were setting me up again. I took photos, videos, and samples of the mud and debris. When I turned around, a white pickup truck was parked on the path. Karen got out, hair perfectly dry, a fake smile plastered across her face. "Morning, Mr. Hale," she said sweetly. "You're trespassing on HOA property." "This isn't HOA property," I replied. "It's city land." "Not anymore. We filed a new claim yesterday," she said, stepping closer. "And I have a restraining order here saying you're not allowed near the lake." She handed me a paper sealed with a court stamp. It was real. I laughed quietly. "You really went this far?" Her smile faltered. "You brought this on yourself. You destroyed those homes, Karen. You knew the wall was going to fail." Her eyes hardened. "Careful with those words. You might regret them." I took a step forward. "You should be careful too. Because last night my cameras caught you here." Every second of it, for the first time her face cracked. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I said, pulling my phone from my pocket and playing the clip. Her own voice echoed through the rain. "He'll never prove it." Her jaw tightened, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Then she lunged forward, snatched the phone, and threw it into the mud. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she screamed. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, because the footage had already uploaded to cloud storage before she even touched it. Later that afternoon, the news van pulled up to my driveway. Cameras, microphones, reporters, and all waiting. My lawyer stood beside me as we showed them the documents, the deleted reports, and the video of Karen sabotaging the pipes. It didn't take long for the story to spread. Within hours, it was everywhere. Local HOA faces criminal probe after homeowner releases damning footage. Karen's phone must have been blowing up, because she showed up again that evening, red-faced, shaking with rage. "You think you've won?" she yelled. "You've just destroyed this entire community." "No, Karen," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." She tried to snatch the papers from my hands, but my lawyer stepped between us. "Ma'am," he said coldly, "you might want to speak to your attorney. The police will want your statement soon." She froze, then backed away slowly, her confidence collapsing with every step. That night, for the first time since the flood, the air felt still, no thunder, no tension. Just quiet, but I knew this wasn't over. People like Karen don't surrender. They retaliate. As I sat by the window staring at the lake reflecting the moonlight, my phone buzzed again. An unknown message. It read, "You think the news will save you? The next storm will wash away more than mud." I looked outside. Somewhere across the water, a light flickered in Karen's window. She was watching me. They called it a storm of nature, but the real disaster was human. The message wouldn't leave my mind. "The next storm will wash away more than mud." I kept rereading it, wondering if it was a threat or just another one of Karen's twisted games. Either way, I wasn't about to sit around waiting. By morning, my lawyer called. "John, the city just launched an official investigation into the HOA. That footage you gave them, it's solid. The county's water management team is involved now." Finally, a little justice, but my relief didn't last. When I walked out to get the mail, 2 men in dark jackets were standing near my driveway. They weren't reporters. They looked like investigators or something else. One flashed a badge too quickly for me to read. "Mr. Hale, we need to ask you a few questions regarding your recent video release." I nodded slowly. "City investigators?" The taller one smirked. "Something like that." They asked strange questions. Nothing about the flood itself, but about how I got the footage, who helped me, and whether I'd tampered with any evidence. I answered carefully. "Everything's backed up and time-stamped. You can verify it all." They exchanged a quick look. Then the shorter one said, "Just keep your phone close. You might be called in for another statement soon." As they walked away, I noticed something odd. Their car had no license plates either. That evening, my wife and I packed a few bags. "You think they'll try to frame you again?" she asked. "I don't think," I said quietly. "I know they're trying." I set up a hidden camera in my office and another one under the porch, both connected to a secure backup drive. I had learned my lesson. At 2 a.m., the noise came. Tires crunching on gravel, footsteps near the window, whispers. My heart pounded. I turned off the lights and watched through the blinds. 3 figures, one of them clearly Karen, stood near my car. One man poured something along the side. Looked like oil or paint thinner. "Are they trying to burn the car?" my wife whispered. "Stay quiet," I said. Karen's voice carried through the still night air. "He thinks he can destroy us? Let's see how it feels to lose everything." The lighter flicked, but before the flame could touch the ground, the porch light burst on automatically, flooding the yard with white light. They froze like deer caught in headlights. I stepped outside, holding my phone high. "Smile," I said calmly. "You're live on 6 cameras." Karen's face turned pale. The 2 men ran for the truck, tires spinning in the mud. Karen stumbled, almost fell, before scrambling into the passenger seat. They sped off, taillights vanishing into the dark. I called the sheriff right then. This time, it wasn't a local cop or HOA buddy showing up. It was the county sheriff himself. He reviewed the footage, eyes narrowing. "That's arson, Mr. Hale. You're lucky you caught them before they did something worse." "Can you arrest her?" I asked. "Not yet," he said. "But after this, we will. Just stay cautious." The next day, the news got wind of it. HOA president accused of retaliation against flood victim. The clip went viral again, this time nationwide. Comments flooded in. "This man needs protection. How is that woman still free? HOA's gone mad." But even as the internet exploded, something deeper was unraveling. The county investigators found that HOA funds, millions of dollars, had been moved into a private account under Karen's husband's name. That money was supposed to be for lake maintenance. Instead, it had been used for community improvements that didn't exist. They called me into the city office to testify. Sitting across from those same investigators, I told them everything. The warnings, the cover-up, the threats, the footage, even the attempted arson. By the time I was done, the room was silent. One of them finally said, "Mr. Hale, you just helped us uncover a full-scale HOA fraud operation." When I left the building, I noticed Karen's car parked across the street. She was sitting inside, sunglasses on, staring straight at me. Then she rolled down the window and said, "You think you've won? They'll never believe the rest of it." "The rest of what?" I asked. She smirked. "Ask your lawyer who really owns this land." Then she drove off. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Who really owns this land? I rushed home and opened my property records. Everything looked normal. But then I noticed something new, a digital update dated just last week. The ownership title had been transferred pending review. "Transferred?" my wife said. "To who?" There was no name listed, just a code, LHA Holdings Inc. I'd never heard of it. But deep down I already knew Karen was behind it. She wasn't just trying to ruin me. She was trying to erase me. They flooded my street, burned my car, and stole my name off my own land, but I'm still standing. The code name haunted me. LHA Holdings Inc. I stayed up all night digging through public records, business directories, even tax filings. Nothing came up. It didn't exist publicly. But after hours of searching, I finally found something. A shell company registered only a month ago under an address that led straight back to Karen's husband's law firm. It was all clear now. They hadn't just framed me, they were planning to take my property. The lawsuit, the threats, the fake ownership transfer, it was part of a land grab. My land was right by the lake, the perfect spot for their planned luxury extension project. That's what the missing HOA funds were for. I couldn't wait any longer. I called the sheriff and my lawyer. "Meet me at the HOA office," I said. "Tonight." When we arrived, the parking lot was empty except for Karen's SUV. The door to the small office was cracked open, light flickering inside. I pushed it slowly and stepped in. Karen was there, sitting at the long meeting table, papers spread everywhere, hands shaking as she tried to shred documents. "It's over, Karen," I said quietly. She didn't look up. "You don't understand. They told me to do it. The investors. The city board. I was just what?" I interrupted. "Following orders? Destroying lives for a payout?" Tears welled in her eyes, but her voice was still sharp. "You think this was my idea? I was trying to save the community." "You have no idea how deep this goes." My lawyer stepped forward. "Everything you say is being recorded." She froze. Then slowly she sat back in her chair, defeated. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she whispered again. The sheriff walked in behind us. "Actually, ma'am, we do. And you're under arrest for fraud, arson, and conspiracy." Her jaw dropped. "You can't do this. This is my neighborhood." The sheriff looked her dead in the eye. "Not anymore." As they cuffed her, she screamed, "You'll regret this, Hale. They'll come for you next." But I didn't flinch. I watched her being led out of the building as the flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. For the first time in months, the air felt lighter. Over the next few weeks, everything unraveled. The county seized HOA records, exposed the money trail, and confirmed that LHA Holdings Inc. was a fraudulent company meant to redirect property deeds. The city issued an official apology, and the mayor himself visited our home to assure us that the land was ours, legally and permanently. Neighbors who once avoided me came by to thank me. Some even cried. They'd all been paying HOA fees for years without realizing their money was being stolen. But what struck me most was how quiet the lake had become. The mud had dried. The smell of rot was gone, and the water reflected the sky again. It almost looked peaceful. One afternoon, I stood by the edge of the lake, watching ducks glide across the surface. My wife came up behind me, slipping her hand into mine. "It's finally over," she said softly. "Almost," I replied. I reached into my pocket and took out my phone, the last file I hadn't released yet, the hidden recording from that night in the HOA office. In it, Karen admitted everything, the investors, the plan, even naming 2 city officials who helped her bury the first inspection report. I uploaded it to the same reporter from Channel 7. Within hours, the story exploded again. Headlines everywhere. HOA fraud scandal expands into City Hall corruption. This time, it wasn't just about me or the flood. It was about something bigger, how people with power could twist the rules until someone finally stood up and said, "Enough." That night, I sat by the lake one last time. The moonlight shimmered across the water like it was finally calm after a long storm. My phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. For a second, my heart skipped. But when I opened it, it was short and simple. "Thank you for exposing them. From one veteran to another, you did your country proud." I smiled, maybe for the first time in a long time, because I hadn't just won back my land. I'd won back my peace, I whispered to the still water. They tried to drown me in lies, but I turned the flood into proof. They said I was responsible for the lake's destruction. Turns out I was responsible for its justice. It had been 3 months since Karen's arrest. The HOA was dissolved. The lake repairs were finally underway, and people had started rebuilding their homes. The town felt alive again. Kids on bikes, laughter on porches, no more fake rules taped to doors. But peace has a strange way of testing you. Just when I started to believe it was over, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Just my name written in bold black ink. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single photo, a blueprint. The lake, the homes, and a new mark drawn right across my property line. Below it, one sentence written in sharp handwriting. "You stopped the HOA, but the board was never the real owner." I showed it to my wife. Her face went pale. What does that mean? I don't know, I said. But deep down, I did. I went back to City Hall straight to Mark's office. When he saw the blueprint, his expression turned serious. John, where did you get this? It was in my mailbox this morning. He pulled up his computer, typing fast. That marking, see this section? It's federal land. Or at least it used to be. Used to be? He nodded slowly. Before the HOA formed, this whole area was part of a government-owned flood control project. It was leased to private investors after funding got cut. And guess what those investors called themselves? I stared at him. LHA Holdings. Exactly, so it wasn't just Karen? He shook his head. Karen was a pawn. Someone much higher used her to hide the paper trail. She might have been the face, but not the hand that pulled the strings. I leaned back, processing it all. So they still think they own the lake? They don't just think they do, Mark said quietly. They filed a new development proposal last week, approved at the state level. They want to drain the entire lake for a resort. My heart sank. All this time fighting, and somehow the same corrupt game was still going on, just with new players. That evening, I stood by the lake again. The sunset looked calm, but something in the air felt wrong. A quiet hum came from across the water. Heavy machinery, distant but steady. They were already starting work. I walked closer, my boots sinking into the soft ground, and saw the new construction signs. Future site of Silver Lake Resorts, it said. Sponsored by LHA Holdings. A man in a hard hat turned toward me. Sorry, sir. You'll need to step back. This area's restricted. Restricted, I said. This is my property. He pulled out a clipboard. Not anymore. According to this, the land's been transferred to state partnership control, effective immediately. I felt my hands tremble. Who authorized this? Board of Infrastructure Development, he replied flatly. You can appeal it, but good luck. That night I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through every document, every email, every legal form I'd ever received. And then I found it. One file buried deep in the HOA's old records. A secret memorandum of understanding between the city, the HOA, and a company named LHA Development Group. The date was from before the flood. The project had been planned all along. Karen hadn't caused the disaster. She'd triggered it on orders. The flood wasn't an accident. It was a setup to clear the land for development, for profit. I printed the file and sent copies to the same reporter who helped me before. The next morning, the headline read, Flood was no act of God. Evidence shows HOA disaster was part of secret development scheme. The story exploded again. Protests started near the construction site. Investors pulled out. And the state froze all new projects until the investigation ended. But the most shocking part came later, when Karen's lawyer contacted me from prison. She wanted to talk. She said something before the sentencing, he told me. Said you weren't her enemy. Said she was protecting someone she couldn't name. I stayed silent. She also said, he continued, tell him the lake always remembers. For a moment I didn't understand, but when I returned to the lake that night, standing in the moonlight where the water touched my boots, I finally saw what she meant. The reflection wasn't calm, it was rising again. Slow, steady, silent. The floodgate from the North Channel had opened on its own. The system was automated. It wasn't supposed to trigger without authorization, unless someone else was still controlling it. I turned toward the hills where the control station used to be. A faint red light blinked in the distance. It wasn't over. Not yet. They called it a flood once, but now I know it was always a cover-up that never stopped flowing.